Hi, good morning. My name is Catherine Rochford, and I'm from Catherine Rochford Designs. Um, my question is related to scaling a business. Okay, so I'm in the process of scaling my business from the local market to going into the international market. But before I do that, I want to be able to get a true value of my business. I do accessories and we make everything, most of our stuff, I should say, from scratch. So we have to go through time and motion studies, etc., etc. We have loads of beads and different things like that. I need to know if it is possible as part of the funding scheme that's out there because it's going to cost me some money and I want to bring someone into the company to do a true assessment and help me get a true assessment of whether I'm costing my products properly, whether they're going to be good for the international market, those kinds of things. But also to be able to go to the bank, I need to know what the true value of every single thing I have in my business is at the time. How feasible is that for me to be able to approach a funding institution like FundAccess to be able to have a professional accountant or whatever is come into the business and help me get to that stage?
Also, that's very possible. And what we do for our clients through business development is technical assistance. And technical assistance is meant to help with those type of things. Now, currently, which I'm reviewing, is that the technical assistance is primarily available to those who are clients of FundAccess, meaning who have a loan facility. But one of the things we did last year, I think it was that we introduced a series of lines of credit which are accessible by anybody for any purpose and can help fund things like that. In the future, however, I see that FundAccess will most likely be able to provide technical assistance to any entrepreneur or business with a fit-for-purpose plan similar to what you have, where you are scaling, you are not looking for money to buy product, or you're looking to assess your business for entry into overseas market, for making sure your processes are sound and that your costing is on correct. And those are things that we'll be willing to look at helping fund because the return then comes in usually viable. So a lot of our technical assistance is things like that are actual grants, and then there are things you can get lines of credit, or you can get small loans to assist with those things, depending on what it is that you're doing. So those are things that we do already and are working currently through our business development department to expand because, as I said earlier, those are the activities that will ensure viability and sustainability more so than just putting a loan in somebody's hand. And that's where we need to kind of shift our focus.
What would you have to bring, say from me as a business, what would I have to bring to you to show that this is what's essential for the business to move forward at this time?
So we would need to see what the business has done so far, whether it's financials, if you have like a business plan, showing where you come from, the history, what you're currently doing, and most importantly, where you want to go, which is important. Mr. Eastmond made the point, and I smiled because I had this discussion just this week. There's only so much that we can do across the 11 parishes of Barbados with. Mr. Eastmond mentioned 287,000 people. The truth is, those are not, we don't have 287 people who are economically active.
Active, yes.
Right? So your business is catering to less than 287,000 people. And if there's anybody else doing similar to you, you are now all targeting that same number of people. So we support for sure businesses who are seeking to go overseas, whether it's regionally or internationally. And it's just for us to be able to have a sense of what you're doing, the history, where you're going, a business plan, financials if you have it, and then what is your particular request and how much do you see that costing. And so we sit down and analyze the business development department to do that, and then we'll see how we can assist.
Thank you very much.
Could I just,
Yes,
I
of
think
course.
the whole idea of grant funding and technical support is very relevant in these times because it fits in to government's plan to increase its exports. And the only way you can do that, and that's why you came with a vision to meet an international market. I'm one who will throw the whole kitchen sink at visions like that because that fits in well with what it is we're trying to do, earn more for an exchange.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Aswahart. The company is Seven of Hearts. To Mr. Eastman first. Love what you touched on about business and stuff, being ready for business. So you touched on all the points, that, I was thinking about. But the question would be to Mr. Simpson. FundAccess. In today's world, let me just touch on the government. Where the government is going worldwide because of loans and stuff, to try to get loans reduced to 1%, 2%, 3%. They face the challenges with climate change, inputs, and what's not that we are facing now. As small businesses, we are facing those same challenges. And we want to scale, we need to buy machinery and stuff. So when we come to FundAccess, a place like FundAccess, in 2024, where we come into you for funding, but when we look at it, your interest rate is between 6% and a 7.5%. And as small business, it's difficult for us because the government is trying to reduce it, and yet we have government agencies such as FundAccess with interest rate at 6% to 7.5%. It's difficult for us because, again, we're facing the same challenges. So I want to know, what are you all doing to be able to help? Because, again, the world is going through a crisis. Small businesses in Barbados are going through it, but we're still facing the same challenges with high interest rates and stuff. And if you look at it, commercial banks and stuff are offering interest rates now at 3%, the credit union at 4% and stuff. We don't need those places. We still need the FundAccess and stuff because we need the help, the logistics that he said that thing, to be able to scale up. We need places like accountants and stuff because when small businesses start, we don't know about accounting. We have families, as he mentioned, and stuff that everything we make, we put back into the business and we take to buy food, do this and do that. So we don't understand about accounting, and we need the help from you all. But to get the help at that interest rate, we can't manage it. What are FundAccess doing in 2024 to be able to help small business without having all of that interest?
The truth is, our interest rate is still the lowest in the market when it comes to loans.
Risk loans. That's help.
So commercial bank interest on loans for business will range from 7 or 8% and up because they do what is called prime plus
That's right.
an amount to cover risk. So depending on your risk profile, your loan in a commercial bank could be 8%, it could be 13%, it could be 15%. Our rates hover between 4 and 7% depending on the category of loan. The 3% and lower loans we're talking about are really mortgages. The mortgage market is at 5.5% and lower, and there's been a bit of a mortgage war between the banks in terms of that. Now, let me talk a bit about interest though, because interest is a cost to the client, yes, but interest is what FundAccess and any lending institution operates on. So the funds that we lend are there for lending. What we pay staff and pay utilities and pay rent and pay is on the interest that we charge. And our rates have been 4 to 6%. There was a period of time where it came down to 4, and that was because of additional support we were getting from government, where government was kind of paying a portion of the interest. That was stopped more than 10 years ago, and so we returned to our standard rate, which is the 4 to 6% or 7.5%, depending on what is the area of business that you are in. Having said that, I think what we try to do is to work with clients in other areas where we have control, because the interest rate is not one that we have significant control over. And that can be from training, technical assistance, which can be grants or lines of credit or other things. And we've issued and launched a whole suite of new line of credit products to supplement the ones we had before. What I will say overall though, there's a cost to everything, and I think this is one of the areas that we need to educate our business owners on. Everything comes at a cost, and that cost has to be planned for. And I think it goes back to Mr. Eastmond's point about understanding business and what you need to be able to do when you get involved in business. And you made a point about businesses not understanding accounting, and that's a big issue for me. I know my staff at FundAccess will say, yeah, because you're an accountant, but it's not just that. That is the only mechanism we all have to know how good a business is doing, right? And I am willing to be flexible in terms of what that information is or the format it takes, at least initially while we train you. But we need to have financial information to know how you're doing, because that is the basis on which you can then plan to access funding, to pay your bills, to do everything you need to do. So I think the real answer to your question is there's not much we can do with the interest rate, but we have to find other ways to support what you are doing in spite of the interest rate, which is still the lowest in the market for what we do. But we have to find other ways to support, and like I said, business development can go through those ways technical assistance, which can be grant, additional loan, refinancing loans. And as I said in my opening comments with Aisha, if you have a loan with FundAccess and there's a challenge, whether it's the high interest rate or the monthly payment, you need to come in and have a conversation with us and let us see how we could refinance or adjust the loan payments to suit your budget, because we don't want the loans to be in default. And if it means we need to add another year to your loan, reduce your payment by $200 or whatever we can, we are willing to do those things, but you need to come to us and say, here is my position, here is the evidence of why I'm in this position, and then we go from there. But we need evidence. Many times people want to come and say, oh, I can't afford to pay $500, I want to pay $100. Where is the evidence that you can't afford to pay $500? You're running a business. Where are the bank statements showing your cash flow? Where's the financial statements, etc., so that we can make an informed assessment and then put a plan in place to assist you.
Right. Well, thank you. Well, because of time, I will leave it there, and we would, I guess, come into FundAccess to get a follow-up.
I don't want you to leave it there because government is just about one cog in the wheel of financing. The bank pays you less than 1% on your deposits at the bank and lends up to 23 and 24% in the marketplace. Maybe we need to turn our attention to what is happening in the banking system and asking them for some of the support that is necessary to engineer or re-engineer what is happening in the financial market for small businesses.
And I totally agree with that comment. But, when we say we meaning the government,
meaning the public of Barbados.
Going into the places like the central bank, to have the central bank work on our behalf. And we have been seeing it, you understand, before, because the banks is a problem, right? So, thanks for that, right?
I wouldn't say the banks are a problem.
No,
I would say that it's a conversation that has to
be.
The reality is, as I said earlier, banks are set up to make a profit, and they have shareholders to satisfy, dividends to pay. So taking excessive risk or unnecessary risk is not something they're going to do. But the conversation has to be had to find the space that the bank needs to occupy, and either on its own or how it can cooperate with FundAccess with businesses to help bridge that divide, which is a conversation that I am already having in the background in terms of where I see a role that they can play, which saves them the risk but helps us to help you.
That's right.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Good.
Good morning. I am Jennifer Marius from Reflections Spa Barbados and Institute. And I have this one question, just one, because it's been burning me for quite some time. I think that in Barbados there are a lot of persons like myself who want to go out there and expand and open up businesses in different places around the island. But when you see maybe a spot that you like, and you're now faced with the change of use, things that have been put in place for eons and decades, and I want to know that as a upcoming business owner who wants to expand her brands, that we are looked at holistically with the direction we're going in, but also to take a look at what the business structure is going to be. Some sort of leeway for us with the approvals of change of use in the country. I'm not saying I want to, put a farm in the middle of but I'm also saying that we need to be able to have a voice with this situation versus being given a no. For persons to just take a look at the business, but for what can be done for us. I'm saying it because we're faced daily with persons that want to open up businesses in places, but they are now faced with a lot of kickback from where they can open. If it's not in a commercial spot, even if it's soft commercial. So I wanna tap into that with you guys, with both of you.
Well, yeah, for me, right? I mean, we got a town and country planning responsibility.
Right.
There's not everywhere that you want to place a business that fits into an overall plan. I think government has a fantastic development where they're developing hubs where certain businesses can go and establish themselves. Within that same, I don't know, I don't know if they are offering mortgages, but certainly being able to rent places. I would like to see that go further. The same thing that they do that they should ought to do with housing, to go with commercial properties, right? That the small business owner, or the business owner, should I say, now has a piece of paper that has some equity that they can, after a few years, you can go to the bank and borrow against that equity that they have in the building. So I'm hoping that it goes beyond just renting buildings and giving people access to a mortgage for a building.
I don't want to rent. I'm renting, and I don't want to rent anymore.
Right.
This is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are in my shoes who don't want to rent anymore. We want to have our businesses, owned.
The same way that we do it for condominiums, I don't see why we can't do it for business places. The concept is already there.
Something has to be looked at.
Issues there that we have to address. The truth is, it's a process that, in my opinion, needs to be deconstructed and reconstructed.
I think so.
A lot of this comes from historically our lack of zoning of areas. So if you drive around Barbados, you can pass a residential area, and right in the middle of it, there's a commercial center, there's a mall, there's a whatever. Compare that to what you see overseas, where there are residential zones, there are commercial zones, there are heavy industry zones.
Yeah.
So we don't have that.
Right.
This building where we are used to be a sugar factory, and there are residences across the street. Yeah. So that is not coming up with that. So that is the first thing that needs to be had, and that's where a lot of the change and use issues come from. Because you're going into an area that historically is residential. But once you say business, regardless of the type of business, there is an issue in change. You just know, for example, one of your businesses is the spa. That's a business that if you go into a residential or close to a residential area will not create any havoc. Save and except making sure you have adequate parking, right?
Well, that
You are
comes
not
with the land
you are
that
not
you're looking at.
manufacturing, you are not heavy industry. No, that's one part. The other part is, I think, once it comes to what we brand small businesses or entrepreneurs, and you're going to access funding past a certain amount, everybody steps back. So
Yes,
you want
they
to
do.
acquire land and develop a bit of property on it, building whatever, we're looking at $2.1 million. Your business can afford that. It's the same first question.
It's a
Right?
massive struggle.
So that is another thing. So I think the only way we can close that gap again is by conversation and negotiation. And maybe there is a role that FundAccess can play, and we can look at that and see how we can help bridge that gap. I think tunnel planning. I think what has to happen is that the ministry responsible for business
Right.
has to initiate some of these links to other areas of government who have powers of control. So there's town and country planning, there may be standards, there may be something to whatever it is you need.
Because you feel
that
like
you
you're,
need
you
to
feel
have
like
the
you're on
free
your own.
access, and so all of these are things that I think the Ministry of Business, with support from its own agencies, of which we are one, we probably need to look at and see how we can intervene and assist in smoothing up that path where there are hiccups. The truth is, again, I come back to the fact that most of the people saying no or saying we can't or we don't want to don't understand the entrepreneurship struggle or the entrepreneurship transition from one step to the next.
Yeah, but you.
So somebody that doesn't understand sees something totally different to what your intent is or what the reality is, because they are operating, especially if it's government, there's a tradition that they're operating within for eons, decades and decades that is not. I am now not picking on anybody, but I'm no chief town planner. I can only act in the way I have seen us operate for the last 50 or 60 years. That's what I've been trained. That's what I've been exposed to. So when I'm now the one to make the decision, these are the
is a
parameters
footprint
Because in which you operate,
This
yeah.
is what I have been shown.
Yeah.
And what you will find in government, and maybe this is where we need to go as well, we need some entrepreneurship in government.
We need
Meaning,
change.
I am town planner, I am responsible. How can I change what I am doing and change the landscape for regular citizens, whether they are just individuals or business persons? How can we change the landscape? How can we change how we do what we do to assist people? So as I said, there are multiple facets to what you are asking, but it all comes back down to there need to be serious conversations at the highest level to say, look, these are roadblocks, these are challenges, how can we work together to smooth these out, to change processes and so on. And I I keep saying, this only happens through forum like these where we talk. You get up, you do an interview, you write an article, I do the same. That is how it becomes a conversation. There are conversations going on in this country about all kinds of things that pale in comparison to the things that we're talking about now. So if they can get airtime and get media time and get somebody's ear, we just need to start having the right conversations in the right spaces with the right people, and I think we will start to see some traction as well.
We still, in a country with very small land space, very high land values when it comes to location, and very high building costs. So that they have to weigh against your decision to want to. For instance, you may get a property that is $20 a square foot, but there are ones with the best of locations that will cost you $100 or $125 a square foot. Can your business afford it?
Yes, my business can afford what I see.
The 100 or
no,
the
no,
5?
no, no, no,
Okay,
no. We got it down. We looking for
I put you in a different
negotiations
category.
here.
We're
looking for negotiations here.
The last thing I will say is this. The only other thing that can be done and will have to be explored is where government creates entrepreneurial zones. And not just buildings now, but zones similar to the VAEPC estates where you have a combination of buildings and vacant plots, where those who want to build have access, those who just want to rent space or buy a unit in a space have that as well. But that would have to be a zone and something that government contemplates rather than just renting space in industrial, what they call industrial estate.
Okay.
So that would be my final suggestion on that, but we need to discuss it. And begin a signal to cut.
Good morning, my name is Celicia Lewis. I am from Happy Trees. I don't have a question, but probably more so a statement to something you said earlier. When you said that, basically a lot of small businesses tend to say that the problem is financial, when usually it's just like a dovetail into other things, and I totally agree with that. For me as a small business person, relatively young in my field, yes, there is a financial issue, but there's more of an access issue. There's more an issue from a lack of guidance, the simple not knowing of how to go about things. When I would say the lack of mentorship, really. When I first started my business, my mentor was Mr. Nichols. And I would have sat with him, went through with him, what I want to do. And I had this big plan. And he looked me dead in my eyes and was like, that is a terrible idea. That is not going to work. And I think that was possible because he was somebody that kind of looks like me in the sense that he is a small business owner. He started as a small business owner. So he could speak the rhetoric that I need to hear to help me to make better decisions. And I find with some of the institutions, they can't speak for FundAccess because they don't have a direct relationship as yet. I think that too often when small businesses or small business owners come and say, okay, this is what I want to do, or this is what isn't working, you get a lot of textbooks ideas of how it should work, and it really doesn't work like that in the real world. Like for me, I would hear sometimes, my brand should be in the supermarket, I should be in more spaces, and I'm like, but it is a logistical nightmare behind doing these things. One of the problems would be shipping. How do I cut down my shipping times? So it's okay for me, or okay for somebody to say, okay, we need to get 5,000 of these things in here. How are we doing that? How are we delivering that? How are we cutting down shipping time from 4 months to 2 months? And when I ask those questions, I can't get an answer. So
that's where you need a mentor as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Who has had that experience. Many times, some of the things people are asking or saying to you are relevant, but there are many steps to be gone through before we get to that point. One of the things I tell persons, especially in industries like yours, you have to get, I usually refer to it as getting your whole base in order before you consider anything else. So you have to get your production process in order. You have to determine how much can I produce in a day. And even if it's 5 units or 10 units, and then determine how can I get these to market. That could be putting them in your backseat and driving to people who you know will buy them. It could be a mini mart, it could be a corner shop in your village, whatever it is. Because that's how you start distribution and creating awareness of the product. It can't be from production to mass supermarket. It's not going to happen that way, right? So I think that's where the mentorship really comes in, because you're right. Somebody like Mr. Nichols would have gone through all that you're going through, gotten to where he was from startup to micro to small to medium size. which is a medium-sized business now, can say, well, here's the path you want. That's what he could tell you. That's a terrible idea. It might be a good business idea, but your approach is what was terrible and needed to be refined and corrected. So that's where mentorship comes in. Again, that is some of what our business development department does. It is an area that I know will be expanded in the future. But identify, this is where the networking comes into. Identify people in your space who have done well. Reach out to them and ask a question. Because it's just guidance you want. Find other people at your level who are doing the same thing, and you two can come together and get these ideas. And then there are people like myself, Mr. Eastmond, and others who just have general business experience, may not be specific to your industry, but there's guidance that can be had. I think one of the things, maybe following on from this initiative or coinciding with it, that we probably need to do is to plan to have some of these forums where we can get all of you together and have these types of conversations. What we're doing today is not enough in terms of time, but to have you in a forum where we can just have discussions about these things, maybe once a month or whatever. Bring your entrepreneurs together, bring in persons with business like yourself, Mr. Eastmond, many others that are around to do things like that. And I say that because recently, when Mr. Rowe passed, I heard all of the accolades, I heard all of the discussion of all he had done as an entrepreneur. What we don't necessarily have, now that he's gone, is any tangible record or documentation anywhere about his journey, how he handled challenges. What from his journey as we celebrate him can we pass on to young entrepreneurs to be able to utilize and do as good as he did. Because as I listened to Mr. Eastmond's comments earlier, failure will come and there's nothing wrong with failure. And that's why I agree with Mr. Eastmond. You have to know when to cut the head off of something and move on. It doesn't represent failure. It represents a good decision that will allow you to continue to be viable, even if it's in a totally different project. So mentorship is important. The stories of others are important. You have guide and passion where you need to be. But outside of that, ask the questions of anyone who you think. So I think clearly that's the role for FundAccess. Clear. I know Mr. Eastmond does similar things as well in terms of having these conversations and doing mentorship. But I think there's room for FundAccess to help formalize that structure to lend assistance to persons like yourself.
Let me just add something though to this, to your question, because I think we still need to have an intense look at the supply mechanisms.
Yes.
Because there ain't a product that is manufactured in this country in the realm of small business that does not have a high price associated with either packaging, printing, whatever it is. You think about the number of people who use in the same bottle, right, in this marketplace. That if you buy, I went to a place once to help a small business person, and they wanted 24 bottles. And I asked the question, so let me ask you a question. What discount will I get if I buy, let's say, 1,000 dozen? They tell me it will be the same price. How would that help you? We need some mechanism. We need some intense look at some mechanism that can put everybody's needs together, whether it is a cooperative, whether it is a business entity, whatever it is, that can source products, bring them in so that you can pull from them at a rate, at a price that can allow you to get into the supermarket, because when you get into the market, it is a function of price what people are willing to pay.
Yes. So because sometimes by the time you finish producing product, it's already at the price that people are willing
And
to
you're
pay,
saying
and
how
that's
long
not
it
your
takes
market,
you
but
to make and how better it is.
We are a high cost production environment.
Yeah.
Already, so
Yeah.
you have to find ways
Yeah.
around that, because the cost of inputs in Barbados are significantly high compared to competitive jurisdictions, even in the Caribbean.
Right.
This market don't care about how much time you spend or how good you think it is and what it will do. They're looking at whatever comes in and compares it against that.
Thank you.
My name is William Beckles, and I'm from Little Legion. And gentlemen, we've been having some interesting conversations on the side. So I have to change my entire thought process this morning, Mr. Eastmond and Mr. Simpson. So here's the thing. As you said before, which I agreed with, funding is not the only problem that small business has. Operations, procedures, systems. Now, will FundAccess, this to Mr. Simpson, will FundAccess look at some sort of a, for lack of a better word, a business manual? I say that because my dear friend, as Richardson said, when he came into business, he didn't know where to go for VAT, where to go for taxes, where to go for KIPO. He didn't know these things. So if you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. So how do you at FundAccess plan to fill this gap for your clients?
That's my business development department. That's what they're charged to do, from research to development. There's several initiatives that are currently being fleshed out in terms of training, in terms of what we call our FundAccess SME toolkit. It's fully being revamped. We're not calling it a manual, but it will have in things like what you outlined. It's a full toolkit where to start, what to do, what are the necessary things, who to turn to. All these different things will be in one toolkit, and that will also form the basis for training, which will be part of the initiative we're currently mapping out, which is the FundAccess University, which will cover training, development, support, everything, and all of that will sit within business development. So those are the initiatives, and these are all things suggested by staff, which are currently in train and being worked on as we speak. And hopefully in another 3 months or so, when we sit again to see where we are, we should be able then to set a timeline as to when we will launch the initiatives and so on. All of that is part of what we've charged business development to do. As I said to the staff and to the board, the business development department needs to now become the lead department in FundAccess, not the loans department. Right. Loans are necessary, but loans are a part of business development. They are not the be-all and end-all of it. Right. So we need to shift the focus from just lending to business development and understand we're preparing you to access money. Right. You access money, we continue to work with you to use that money wisely and to develop your businesses into viable, sustainable entities. Right. So that is what the plan is, and it rests solely within business development.
Okay. Yeah. And what that approach does is to move the whole cadre of informal business people into the formal business sphere. Right. So that they can get more assistance because they're now doing the things that they ought to do. And let me tell you, I mean, it is difficult even for people who have been in this business to even deal with all the regulations that now hoisted upon us by KIPO.
But I come into that next.
By KIPO.
Because I fell captive to that. And in doing that, I spoke to many other people. When I went to there twice, I met at least 15 people each visit.
Me paying that $3,000, that's ridiculous.
So you know, I want help me here now, because you expect a small business now that ain't got that scratching to get money when the month comes to pay $3,000 for penalties.
I think it is the most unjust. Let me speak because I think it's the most unjust thing that ever happened in the small business sphere.
Thank you.
Because you have a lot of people who are not really connected to what is required.
Correct.
They don't have the ability to hire corporate secretaries and lawyers like that.
Yep.
But here they are, they may have 2 directors. That was $6,000.
Exactly.
I still have people struggling how to actually pay that without closing their businesses down.
Exactly. So are we going to...
I'm big on process, and it's a process issue. And the responsibility has been passed on to businesses represented. Now, here's the point. If I go tomorrow and incorporate a company, whichever attorney incorporates it does not sit me down and say, here is what will happen. No, you have a company. Here are the filings you need to do. Here is the cost. Here is the plan. That is not done.
Right.
So 1 year later, you see a notice and the returns are due. You go to try and do that when you see the notice, and it's too late because you missed your deadline. There's not enough education surrounding it. And I've had this conversation with the RA, with KIPO, with the ministry, because I don't see a fault in the rule. I see a fault in the education around the rule. Compliant.
Exactly.
Right? Because it's $100 is a fee for the return.
Correct.
Which most businesses
would pay.
I
Gladly.
believe as well saying that fee for the return should be scaled based on revenue or some other metric. Because I do not believe that for annual return, big business, the masses and the Sagicor should be paying $100 and small business paying the same $100.
That's right.
So
again, come back, it's process and procedure.
Correct.
So
correct.
I don't mind paying, and I think the annual return and compliance is necessary. It's
right.
costly,
I agree.
This one is correct, even in big business.
Yes.
But I think the whole rule and the whole regime needs to be assessed. I know they've capped it now at 3,000. I know they've changed the filing deadline to match your incorporation date. All good steps, but we still need to address the education around all of these things.
Right.
And for example, give you a prime example that happened to me this week. went into NIS to file NIS for clients as they usually do every month. Self-employed contributions were due this month. Only to get into NIS to see a thing plastered on the window. You no longer have to file forms. There's just a slip now that you indicate how much contributions you're paying.
How are you supposed to know that?
I spoke to a supervisor. It's not on your social media. It was not in the media. It's not on CBC. It's not in the newspaper. You have the email addresses of all self-employed.
Everyone.
No email came. How was I supposed to know this? I've just got home from my car and driven out here to get extra forms.
Yes.
To find out I don't even need a form. Secondly, I said to them, you now have a slip that says, place the amount of contributions you're paying. It doesn't ask what is the salary contributions are based on.
Right.
If you change that, I said to the cashier, so if I change the salary the contributions are based on, how will you know? Because there's no space here to compare that.
Exactly.
She looked at me and she smiled and she said, your guess is as good as mine. Because again, there's a flaw in the policy.
In the system,
now,
exactly.
Do I understand the intent, which is to provide more flexibility to self-employed people to pay? Yes.
Yes.
But the system and the policy is still flawed in terms of educating and communicating what is the requirement. So I think that is what is missing in a lot of the policies. Because if people knew when the deadline came, the $100 would be paid, and there would be no issue then of penalty.
Exactly.
Right? But there's no education on it. Nobody is aware, especially small business people are trying to keep the doors open.
Correct.
And then they go to CAIPO or they get a notice. They have to do something. They go to get a clearance to find out, I was to do this. I know the penalty is $3,000.
Exactly.
And I have those cases that I'm dealing with on a daily basis.
Right. Yes,
But it's also the notification and the understanding that you're trying to get over to people. How many people know what the annual return is? Some people think that is the income tax return. So I pay my return.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know.
So we're on the same page. And you mentioned just now that big company paying $3,000, small paying $3,000. That brings me to my next point.
But I don't even do the penalty.
No, I mean,
no.
I'm just saying. I'm saying now. You mentioned take the word small out, which I agree. But shouldn't we are playing the same field as the big companies? Same NIS, same light bill, same water bill, same telephone bill, same everything basically, same staff pool to pull from. Shouldn't there be some, maybe a 2-year or 1 year, I don't know, government lobby say, listen, Mr. Lady Power, my portfolio has 10 tons per business days. Could you give them 5% for the first 12 months?
You're not going to get that.
No, don't tell me literally.
I understand where you're going, but we have to do it differently.
Right.
Government can't interfere with private sector.
Right. Okay. Right.
And I think it comes back to Mr. Eastman's point. We need to do a better job at preparing people to get into business.
Correct.
Right?
Okay, good.
Because if you're going to get into business, you can't get into business only looking at the price of the product. You have to understand rent, insurance, salaries.
Right. All the costs.
And because if you're going to drop the small from it, we need to operate as businesses.
Businesses, full stop.
And these are requirements. So we have to find a way to prepare people for the responsibilities of business.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the responsibilities are excessive. I don't. Because the costs, look, whether it's Massey, A1, or my business or yours, the electricity costs are too high, full stop.
Right, okay.
It doesn't matter
who it is.
For Massey, you can now see an increase in the price of food. For me, or for you, you can see an increase in your gym fees or my fees.
Correct.
The reality is, the price of electricity is too high as an example. The price of other inputs are
too high. Yes.
So I think once we move small and we look at business, the business landscape is what we need to look at, and we need to better prepare people entering the world of business for the responsibilities and help them map out how do I price my product or service, how do I compensate for these things and prepare to take my business to market. Is where we can have greater value and input than trying to get government to do moratoriums on do this or to do that. Because, for example, during COVID, government asked the banks to do moratoriums on loan payments, and you know what? It ended there. When the banks were ready, they came back. Nobody prepared the business for when the moratorium was going to end. So it comes back to process and preparation. I think that's where we need to put more of our energy rather than asking government to set aside certain things on our end.
Well, on that note then, how about, because you said that FundAccess is putting processes in place, who better to assist FundAccess other than their clients who've been through the rigor? Myself, for example, you know, I've been in business for 30 years and I've learned a lot of stuff myself because I'm a curious kind of person and I want to know stuff. And Mr. Eastmond was the very first business officer I ever met back in Yes. And up to this day, I don't remember, there was a guy in the class and you asked the first question, who do you want to be your customer? And he stood up and said, the man that he want, the man that buying he bait. You remember that fella? I understood what you were going, and I understood what he said. But in his thinking, that's what he wanted to do. A lot of persons that have products will not be successful businesses, and FundAccess don't burst the bubble, but we need to prepare them and educate them on, okay, this may not work how you have it, but we can see how we can better educate you to take it to the next level. I know
that is what we are charged with doing, but
right.
The ecosystem has to come together. Because we're doing things, everything can't fall to us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
there are initiatives we're working on now that will bring some of this out, but everybody has a role.
Right.
And if you're going to show us for everything, you're not give us all the resources that the other people have to. But in terms of your role and clients, the conversation has to be had, and it does not have to be driven by FundAccess.
The FundAccess, exactly. And we had a wonderful time. We can talk for more and more hours. I'm sure we will, but the guys said we got to go. So, guys, thank you once again for your time and effort. Thank you.